First, I would like to introduce someone that's going to have a message for us, and his name is Igor Alonso, and Mr. Alonso is joining us from, he's from Florida, and that may look like a fake background, but folks, it ain't. He is in New Mexico, and it looks absolutely gorgeous as the sun rises. Igor, I don't know how the weather is there, but in Minnesota, it has been brutally hot. And what did you say? How hot was it? I heard you ask. Well, thank you for asking. Igor, it was so hot in Minnesota that I saw a chicken lay an omelet. I mean, I'm talking hot. It is really,
That's
it
hot.
has been hot. So with all the moaning going on for the bad joke, I welcome you. It's great to have you here, and welcome to Minnesota Crossroads.
Thank you, Skip. I appreciate the welcome, and the weather here is beautiful. Actually, it's in the 60s this morning. It's a little earlier than there in Minnesota. We're an hour behind Mountain Time, but the weather's been fantastic. We in our travels, we went through Las Vegas, so you can imagine the heat that was there. So in contrast, this is really very, very nice and enjoyable. This morning, I hope that what I share could bring some hope to some of you. If you don't need hope, raise your hand. Don't we all need hope? Because hope tells you that there's something that's coming that you are not ready for or you're not aware of, and hope keeps you alive. In my career, I remember the chief marketing officer or distribution officer saying to us as a VP, hope is not a strategy. I remember that, him saying that. And I wasn't sure what his belief was. But, I learned through my career, which was in sales leadership, that once you've done or everything that you can, you have nothing other than hope. And hope is important for all of us because it says, you know what, we need to do everything we can, and then understand that at some point, all we have is hope, and allow God to do his part. Being in sales throughout the last 25 years, I'm all about performance, right? That's what sales is. I've led teams of over 100 people. I was vice president of sales in South Florida, where I live, for over 9 years. And in 2007, I was kind of bored, honestly. I wanted something different, and I took a role with the startup. If you know anything about startups, you know that you're definitely going to need hope, because the statistics on startups are not very good. But I knew that I wanted to do something different, and I felt God kind of pushing me in that direction. So I took the step into that, though I was in a very comfortable role. And 6 months into that role, the organization decided that it wasn't working out, and I found myself rethinking, why did I even do this? I was such a good place, doing very well. My team was doing very well. I had won several awards for performance, and I was very well respected among my colleagues. And I began to doubt myself, right? And despite what confidence you have, we all at times doubt our abilities and start second guessing ourselves. And I certainly did. And I began to kind of think about that. And subsequent to that, I had another opportunity. I kept looking for, trying to figure out what God was trying to do. Is, okay, God, I was in a good place. I took a leap of faith, and I find myself here in this place, and now I'm not sure what you're doing. Similar to your story, Skip. Subsequent to that, I've had some challenges trying to get back to where I was, and so I in the process of doing that, I had already began a graduate program with a university for my doctorate degree, which I will be completing here in about 2 weeks when I defend my dissertation. Um, and so, I wasn't quite sure what God was trying to do. Today, I find myself, if I fast forward, because I know we're limited on time, I find myself in a new place. I've sought some consulting opportunities, which I'm in the process of fulfilling back from in the Miami area where I'm from, and those opportunities are opening up. What I'm starting to see new doors uh, where I see my career kind of going down a different path. And I will tell you that that wasn't exactly my plan, which I think brings us uh, to a crossroad, if I could use that word loosely. When God says in Romans 8:28 that, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, he's not saying that all things are good. He's saying that whatever happens, that they work together for good. Now, if we were only patient enough to see some of those things through, and if I was only patient enough to fully understand what that means. Second part of that verse says, to those who are called, to those who love God, and to those who are called according to his purpose. And maybe that's just it. How much, Igor, do you trust God? And I want to leave you with a couple of things here. And I thought about this as I was getting prepared to talk to you, and I hope that you're encouraged by this. If God is so trustworthy that we can trust him with our eternity, certainly he is trustworthy enough for us to trust him with our career. Isn't he? Your life is much more important than your career. And we know that if we trust him, that he's going to always be there for us. And that's his promise. I want to leave you with these 3 lessons that I learned and I'm learning as we speak. And the first one is God's plan is better than ours. Oh, yes, it really is. Have a plan. Pursue your plan. But understand that your plan should be written with a pencil, because God is the one that has the best plan. The second principle that I've learned here is don't compromise your personal vision. God has given each and every one of us a personal path, a vision, sometimes because of pressure, whether that's economic or professionally. Stay open to that and don't compromise just for the sake of having that job. You may have financial needs that may be pressing upon you, but if God has given you a vision and put something in your heart, hold on to that, because you may just be on the verge of doing something incredible. So hold on to that. And the last thing is keep working hard on yourself. You see, we're all in a process of development. It doesn't matter how old you are. Skip mentioned he was old. Well, guess what? So am I. I just turned 60 this year. Keep learning. Keep building yourself. You don't know what's next, but God does. And through your efforts, your personal endeavors, God is going to open up some doors for you. Whether you know what those are or not, God can be trusted. So don't give up on yourself. Don't allow the naysayers to push you in a different direction. Stay focused. Keep preparing yourself for what's to come. And my guess is what's to come, it's better than anything else that you've ever been a part of. So stay on track. I hope that this message and my short story has blessed you in some way.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us from the beauty that is New Mexico. And what a message. Thank
My
you
pleasure.
so much, Igor. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Skip.
Man, I'm inspired. So blessings to you, Igor. So boy, that's tough to follow, but I got just the guy to do it. We are so fortunate this morning to have Joel Swanson with us. Joel is an expert in something called EOS, in Entrepreneurial Operating System, a business system that he is an expert at implementing in businesses. But you know what? It's a business system that can also help us in our job search and provide structure and organization, which is super cool. And I can't wait to hear about it. We're so lucky to have Joel, and I think I heard Joel ask about how hot it was here in Minnesota since you're here. Yes. So since I thought that's what you said. It's so hot, Joel, that I saw a squirrel picking up nuts with potholders. That is hot. It is hot here, and I'm done. I promise I won't offer another how hot how hot is it. But we are thrilled to have you here, Joel, and the time is yours. We look forward to your message, and welcome to Minnesota Crossroads.
Thank you. Well, Skip, I saw you had the notepad, and I'm just going to guess you've got at least 2 more of those hot jokes written down there. And so everybody just be careful, because he said, I promise, but I'm not so sure. So we'll see. So,
fair enough.
All right, let me share my screen here. All right. So as Skip said, EOS is a system for helping companies grow and thrive. And the reason that it's important, especially in this market, is because there is more EOS activity happening in the Twin Cities than there is in any other major metro by at least a factor of 2. So Minneapolis is really, the hotbed of the world with EOS. And so if you are looking at jobs in corporate, so you're talking to companies that have 3,000 employees and things like that, then you're probably not going to run across EOS. But if you are talking to small organizations, and everybody defines small differently, so we'll say, anything up to a couple hundred. The biggest companies running on EOS tend to be, 400, 500, 600 people. There's a few exceptions, but mostly we're talking about small businesses. So down in the, 100 people range. If you are talking to those companies and you are in Minneapolis, you are going to be talking to companies who are running on EOS. And my goal here this morning isn't to say, hey, let me take all of my knowledge from the past, 80 years of my career and stuff it into your head about EOS. I'm not trying to make you experts in EOS. There's plenty of other ways to learn more about EOS itself. What I want to do this morning is really help you understand what are the most critical things for you to know as you engage with a prospective employer who is running on EOS, so that you can set yourself up for success as much as possible, and so that you can make sure that this is a place that you really want to go. And so that's what this is really about. And just double checking, my screen is sharing the way it's supposed to? Anybody?
Yeah, yes, it is. You're just fine.
Just want to make sure. I've got 4 monitors, and every once in a while something weird might happen. Like Skip said, my name is Joel Swanson. I'm certified in this system. I did not create this system. It was created by a guy in Detroit, probably about 20 years ago. And he developed a bunch of these tools in his family's business. And then when he sold the family business, he started using these tools that he developed to help other organizations. And at some point he had kind of a crossroads. There I want to use the word again. He had to decide, am I just going to be a consultant, or am I going to create a system? And he elected to create a system, fortunately for all of us. And so there's 450 people like me across the world who have been trained and certified to implement this system. And so the stats change so quickly, I lose track of them, but we just passed 11,000 companies that we've taken through this process in EOS. So what you find in EOS isn't, here's brand new ideas that nobody's ever thought of before. What you find is the genius of what Gino Wickman, who created EOS, what he did is he took all like the best business thinking and he distilled it down into really a simplified approach to strategic planning that normal people can execute without a strategic planning department. And then he said, what can we take out of this and still have it work? And he stripped out everything that he could possibly take out and still have it work. And what we're left with is EOS. And so what is the landscape of EOS? I told you that adoption in the Twin Cities market is huge. The one thing that I also need to clarify is that what we're talking about is called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. However, the first book that was written is called Traction. There are 6 books now, but first was called Traction. And so lots of people tend to refer to EOS as Traction. So while technically it's correct to say our company runs on EOS, you'll hear people say, we use Traction or we run on Traction. And it's the same thing. So just letting you know that part of it there. And target market, I talked about the size size of companies that typically run this. The other thing that you should be aware of is that there's 2 different ways that people can do this. So there's self-implementation and there's certified implementation. And self-implementation means that there's 6 books available that you can buy on Amazon and read that give you lots and lots of information and get you a good chunk of the way there in terms of what you need to do to run your company on EOS. So there's lots and lots of people that have read the book or read the books, and there's lots of free tools available online. And so they've just taken those things and they're doing it themselves in their organization. What I do is I come in as an outsider to not be a consultant from the standpoint of I'm going to teach you or I'm going to tell you what to do in your company. I don't know how to run your company, but what I do know how to do is I know how to get everybody moving in the same direction using these tools. And so you'll find both of those. The self-implementation organizations tend to be slightly less sophisticated in what they do with EOS, but it's certainly not an invalid way of doing it. So just be aware that there's 2 different things you'll run across. And so it is starting to be that some companies advertise that they are running on EOS, like they will actually say that, or they've got it on their website. Most don't do that yet. So how do you know if they are using EOS if they don't say so? And there's really 2 big things. One is to look for the orange stuff. And if you'll see in this picture, the book on the right there is Traction. That's the first book, and that's the most likely one that you'll see sitting around people's offices. But all of the books are black and orange. So you see this chunk in the middle where it says Rocket Fuel, What the Heck is EOS, How to Be a Great Boss, Get a Grip, Traction. Those are all EOS books. And they all have that same kind of branding. And then this 3-ring binder here that's orange is what's called a leadership team manual. And that's what we use. That's kind of the workbook that we use in EOS. So as you're in an office, looking around and seeing those things is a good indication that they're running on EOS. But then the other thing is that EOS companies really speak a certain language. And you talk to some companies and they're talking about KPIs and strategic goals and projects and org chart and things like that. In EOS, there's a different language that companies speak. So they talk about accountability charts, and they talk about scorecards, and they talk about rocks, and they talk about right person, right seat. And so as we're going through this presentation, the rest of it, I want you to just take note of the terms that I'm using, because obviously I speak the EOS language. Those are the terms that you want to listen for. And if you're talking to a company and you see these materials or you hear these terms, that's the big indication to you that you're working or you're talking to a company who's running on EOS. And by the way, companies who run on EOS tend to have their act together a lot more than others. And so if you find a company who's running on EOS and you will be talking to them, I highly recommend you work there, because life is so much easier in those environments. So there's a few important tools that is relevant to our discussion today. The first is what we call the VTO, and that stands for Vision Traction Organizer. This, and we're going to come back to these at the end. So A, we're going to come back to these at the end. B, I am more than happy to send you guys all these slides so you can take notes if you want. Otherwise, you can just sit back and my email address will be up at the end. You can email me and say, can I have the slides, please? And of course you can. So we'll come back to these at the end, but at a high level, just so you kind of see where we're going, there's a handful of really important tools that are relevant specifically to you as you're talking to companies running on EOS. The first is the VTO, stands for Vision Traction Organizer. And this is the document that outlines who we are, where we're trying to go, how we're going to get there. So where is this company headed? That's all in the VTO. The second is the accountability chart. So this looks like an org chart, but it operates very different. So this is how you know what you would be accountable for inside the organization. Third is ROCKS. So ROCKS is not an EOS term. It came from Stephen Covey, but the basic idea is a 90-day action item that everybody's agreed that you need to execute in order to stay on track for your plans. And EOS companies establish ROCKS every single quarter. Fourth is a scorecard, and KPIs, flash reports, heat maps. We in EOS we do it a little bit different, and I'll show you how that works in a scorecard. But the scorecard is how you know what metrics you would be held accountable for. And then the last is a tool called the People Analyzer, and the People Analyzer is what EOS companies use to ascertain whether or not somebody is the right person for the organization and whether or not they are in the right seat in the organization. And so that's really the critical one that everything rolls up to in terms of what you need to be aware of. So just EOS at a high level, like I said, I'm not trying to make you experts in EOS. I just want to give you a little bit of context. So there's 6 key components to the EOS model. And the idea is that any weakness that exists in a company, if we ask why long enough, it's going to come down to an issue somewhere in one of these 6 key components. So vision is about how we get people all on the same page and make sure that we're moving in the same direction. The people component is about getting the right people for your organization. So it's not good and bad people, it's about right fit. Third is data. So how do we run the organization based on information and not based on somebody's intuition or who's yelling the loudest or who's got the biggest office. And then issues is about how do we track and resolve issues in the organization. Process is about how do we create consistency at a high level without really squashing the entrepreneurial spirit of a company. And then traction is about execution. So all that stuff is great. How do we bring this down in such a way that people can actually get things done? Because nothing changes in an organization unless a person acts. So the vision component, there's 2 components to this. One is answering the 8 questions. And the 8 questions are these questions on the VTO. So the first is, what are your core values? And in EOS, we don't do core values because we want pretty things to put on the wall. We do core values because this is how an EOS company defines who the right people are for the organization. So important clarification here, where companies mess this up is generally where they try to create core values for their organization. And creating core values for an organization is the wrong way to look at this. Every organization has core values. We just have to be intentional about discovering what they are and then being intentional about making sure that we hire people, fire people, review, reward, and recognize people all based on those core values. So an EOS company will have been through an exercise not to say what core values should we have, but to say what core values exist in this organization and how do we be intentional about them. And in EOS, we talk about right people and we talk about right seats. And once again, this isn't a new thing. This is Jim Collins and Good to Great. Got to get the right people on the bus, got to get the wrong people off the bus, got to get the right people in the right seats on the bus. And so we talk about right people and we talk about right seats separately. Right people is just about core values. So I may be completely incompetent. You don't want me working in your organization. But if I uphold your core values, by definition, I am the right person for your company. Now, again, we have to have both, but we look at them separately. So that's core values. And second is core focus. Core focus is really the sweet spot. So what is it that this company is passionate about, genetically encoded to do? And will help you understand, you know, what are they really trying to do as an organization? And third is the 10-year target. 10-year target is what's the big goal out there that we're all driving toward or rowing toward. Fourth is the marketing strategy. Marketing strategy is about being clear about, you know, you don't need all of the clients. You don't want all of the clients. You just want the clients that are the best fit for you. And if they're not the best fit for you, you want to encourage them to go suck the life out of your competitors. And so we need to be clear about what that really looks like. That's the marketing strategy. Next is a 3-year picture. So this is called picture for a reason. There are some of you on this call that are really good at finance and can look at spreadsheets and tell you the story of a company just based on looking at the metrics. The vast majority of people in the world cannot do that. And so just telling people here's what all the metrics are going to be for the next 3 to 5 years really doesn't help. The 3-year picture is about creating a picture so everybody can look and see and feel and get a sense of where this organization is going and quite frankly, what's in it for them. Next is the 1-year plan. Most companies try to do 26 things every single year and they get almost none of them done. And so in EOS, we take a very simplified approach and say, all right, well, if this is where we're going to be in 3 years, what are just a handful, 3 to 7, hopefully closer to 3 things that we must get done this year in order to stay on track for that 3-year picture. And so that'll be important for you to know. Quarterly rocks. 90 days is about as long as a human being can focus. And so just saying this is what we're going to do this year isn't good enough. We have to say this is what we're going to do this year. And then what do we have to do this quarter in order to stay on track? And we set those rocks every single quarter and those cascade through the organization. So when EOS is fully rolled out through a company, every single person in the organization has at least one rock that they execute every single quarter. So you want to know what a company's really trying to do, you can look at their rocks. And then issues, this one isn't important for this part of this discussion, so I'm going to skip over it. And these 8 questions, you look at these shaded boxes, those are, the 8 questions are these shaded boxes. And what you see here is the document that we call the Vision Traction Organizer, usually referred to as the VTO. So core values, core focus, 10-year target, marketing strategy, 3-year picture, 1-year plan, rocks, issues list. This is the Bible to a company running on EOS that gets everybody on the same page. Where are we going? Who are we as people? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? Well, that's the VTO. And then on the people component, we've got right people, we've got right seats. And I said earlier that right people is just about core values. And so the tool that we use here is called the People Analyzer. Now, what you need to know is that core values are deeply, deeply important to EOS companies. So they are not just something that was randomly created. They are something that they eat and breathe and is really critical to them. And so the important thing in EOS is being clear on to what degree somebody upholds your core values. And so this is the tool that we use in EOS, and it works like this. So a company's values go across the top, and this is just this is a sample set of core values. These are the core values of EOS worldwide. So humbly confident, grow or die, help first, do the right thing, do what you say. If you do all of those things and do them well, you are a right person for EOS worldwide. Now, on the other side, then we put names. And so we don't talk anymore about, well, what do we think about Sally Jones? Do we think that she's a good fit? No, we take it more granularly than that. And we talk about Sally Jones specifically on one core value at a time. And so everybody gets rated with a plus minus, or a minus. So plus means, you know, nobody's perfect, but yeah, when I think Sally Jones, I think humbly confident. Yeah, she embodies this. Plus minus is, you know, not kind of neutral. And then a minus, it doesn't mean that Sally Jones never did something humbly confident, but when I think humbly confident, I'm not thinking Sally Jones. And so everybody gets a plus minus, or a minus for each one of those core values. So Sally Jones, a plus minus, a plus plus. John Smith, not so much. George Wilson, somewhere in between. And what they are doing, they meaning the companies that are interviewing you for EOS, is they're putting your name in this thing, and they are asking questions to try to get at whether or not you uphold these core values. Now, important thing to state here is that there's nowhere to hide in an EOS company. Some of you are very good at interviewing. I am very good at interviewing. I'm very good at test taking. And so it might be possible to say all the right things in terms of answering the questions in such a way that they say, boy, we got a plus across the board here. We really want this person. But if it's not real, you're not going to be able to sustain that, and you will be found out. So, Igor was talking about don't sacrifice just to get a job. And that's especially true with an EOS company. There is nowhere to hide. If you are not on board with whether the company is trying to go and how they want to get there, if you do not uphold the core values, you will not last. And that's not good for you, and it's not good for them. So this is how the people analyzer works. Now, none of that really matters unless we set a minimum acceptable threshold. So if we're going to say that John Smith is the right person for this organization, we have to say what's acceptable, because nobody's perfect. We're not going to get everybody in the organization to be all pluses. And really the bar that we call it is any combination of 3 pluses, 2 plus minuses, no minuses. And if the company has 6 values or 4 core values, it's going to be a little bit different. But the point is that there is a standard that they are measuring you against and making sure that you uphold that. And you may be phenomenal in 5 of the 6 of their core values, but if you're a minus in 1 of the core values, that's a deal killer. So that's People Analyzer. Now, the accountability chart. So this is the tool that helps us understand what it is that you will be really asked to be accountable for. And it works like this. So like I said earlier, this looks like an org chart. Functions very different, but I'll go over the most important things for you here. So at its simplest, every company has 3 major functions. We've got a sales and marketing function, we got an ops function, we got a finance function. Now this is customized for every EOS company. So good chance it won't look exactly like this, but just at its simplest, this is how it fits together. Now, what EOS companies believe is that only one person can ever be accountable for any one thing at any one given time. Because if more than one person is accountable, how many people are actually accountable? 0. So that doesn't mean that we're here to create silos and say we don't help each other, we don't work together. But what it means is that we only need one person to lose sleep over something. I met with a company yesterday that is a food distributor, and they're having a terrible time with labor, and they're extremely short-staffed in their warehouse. And they said, we have food that we need to deliver tomorrow, which is today, that we are contractually obligated to deliver, that is going to, food can't just sit in the warehouse for 2 weeks, that is going to go bad, and we do not have enough people to deliver that food on Thursday. That's bad. Everybody in the leadership team is working together on this. But if somebody's going to lose sleep over it, we don't need everybody losing sleep over it. We just need one person. So who is ultimately accountable for the delivery of the food? Well, probably the operations team. Okay, so whoever's in charge of operations, you lose sleep over the fact that we can't deliver our food. Everybody else can help, but they can worry about other things. So that's what accountability is really about, and saying, what is the function? What does each person need to obsess over? There is a seat above these called the integrator. The integrator is typically a GM, like a COO, chief operating officer, that kind of a thing. And an integrator is a person who is really heads down in the business, who's managing things on a day-to-day basis. So watching the P&L, making people decisions, steering the ship on a daily basis, removing obstacles and barriers, keeping everything kind of moving forward. That's an integrator. And not all the time, but most of the time, there's also a seat above this that we call the visionary. The visionary is typically the founding entrepreneur, and you've worked with visionaries and you've worked with integrators, even if they haven't been called that. The visionary is typically a much bigger picture thinker, so better on emotion than logic. They're good at sales, they're good at relationships, they've got their finger on the pulse of the market. They've got 20 ideas every single week and they want them all implemented. And some of them are awesome, but most of them are not. And they tell you about something at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then they come to you at 4 o'clock and ask why they didn't get it by the end of the day yesterday. That's a visionary. They're always trying to move that stuff faster. They're always trying to push more stuff into what we're trying to do. They've got phenomenal ideas. So that's a visionary, and we need both in an organization. But you need to be aware that they're different people in an EOS company. And so as you're talking to people, you're going to respond differently, not because you're going to lie, but because you're going to speak the visionary's language if you're talking to the visionary. You're going to speak an integrator's language if you're talking to the integrator. So with these, several important things. One is that EOS companies do not hire speculatively. They don't say, well, let's just find some good people and see where we can plug them in. If an EOS company is hiring, there is a seat on an accountability chart that has a function and has accountabilities already built in that has no name in that seat. And they are trying to find somebody who's a great fit to stick in that seat. So if you are talking to an EOS company, it's not an ethereal thing about what would it be like to join XYZ company. This is a seat that we're trying to fill. And so you need to know what that seat is and what the major accountabilities are. Now, there will be a job description. Job descriptions are, in a lot of cases, more of a formality in EOS companies. So yes, it makes sense to have a 4-page job description to satisfy all the HR compliance things and whatever. But what I really care about if I'm hiring somebody in an EOS company is, what is the seat that's vacant? What are the things this person's accountable for? Notice there's only 5 lines here. So we're not talking about being accountable for 14 different things. We're talking about just a handful of things that this person's accountable for that they need to obsess over, and determining whether or not somebody really fits in that seat. Well, how do we know if they fit in that seat? And the way we figure out if they fit is with this acronym that we call GWC. So G stands for get it, W stands for want it, and C stands for the capacity to do it. So right people, right seats, got to have both. So core values are important. That's over here. If we're talking about right seat, if we're talking about somebody really being able to hit home runs in this open seat that we need to fill, what they're trying to figure out is, do you get it? Do you want it? Do you have the capacity to do it? Get it is about, like, what's the gray matter that's in your head? If you're in finance, at age 4, you didn't understand GAAP accounting. You didn't understand a P&L and a balance statement and cash flow. You didn't understand all those things. But the gray matter, like the raw DNA that makes that intuitive for you, that was already there. God put that there. That's get it. You were born with the ability for this to all just make sense for you, even if you didn't understand the technical aspects of it. Want it is, do I actually authentically want this position? I don't have to overpay somebody to want it. I don't have to micromanage them to want it. I don't have to hold their hand to want it. They authentically want to be accountable for these things every single day. And then capacity is all the things that you've learned and accumulated since you were born. So yeah, you had to learn GAAP accounting. You had to figure out how to do Excel. You had to learn all the compliance things for tax law, and all of that stuff is capacity. So get it, you're born with it. Want it, what you desire. Capacity, the ability to actually execute on it and do so without somebody holding your hand. That's what GWC is. And they are trying to figure out, does this person GWC this seat? So what we do then is it comes back to the people analyzer. And on the people analyzer, we already talked about the core values, but then the GWC gets added, get it, want it, capacity to do it. And the non-negotiable for those is a yes, yes, yes. So you can't say, yes, this person gets it. Yes, they have the capacity to do it. No, they don't really want it, and have that be a right person for the organization. You do not have to be perfect on core values. Nobody's perfect. But get it, want it, capacity is a non-negotiable yes, yes, yes. So we'll come back to this at the end in terms of action items, but that's how the people analyzer fits together. And then the next component is data. And the first tool there is called SCORECARD. And again, I'm skipping over stuff to just go over the things that are most critical for you. SCORECARD and measurables. And the SCORECARD is the tool. The measurables are the individual things on a scorecard. And so scorecards in EOS work like this. We are looking for, as much as possible, weekly leading edge activity-based metrics that predict the financial future. So the scorecard is not a finance tool. You still need to do all the finance things necessary to run your company. The scorecard is a data tool that's helping us know, are we winning, are we losing, are we drifting? I like to think about this in terms of rumble strips. So if you're driving down the highway and your car goes at you, there's not a problem yet. But you've hit the rumble strips, and if you don't make a correction, and this is a small correction, but if you don't make a correction, you're going to be in the ditch. And most companies don't look around at this stuff until they get to the end of the quarter and they're in the ditch and they say, holy crap, what happened? EOS companies take a proactive approach and they look at it on a weekly basis. Because if we were supposed to close 5 deals every single week, and last week we only closed 4, we want to talk about that now, not wait to the end of the quarter and discover that we missed our financial targets by 30%. So on a scorecard, there's a list of measurables, all the things that we're measuring. There's a who, so every single measurable has a person who is accountable for it. So that doesn't mean that lots of people can't be involved, but again, one person is going to be accountable for making sure that this metric is on track. There's always a goal. And then we're looking at 13 weeks at a glance so we can see patterns and trends. Now, the reason that this is critical is because every person in an EOS company has their name next to at least one measurable on a scorecard in the organization. And so you need to find out what are those measurables that you would be held accountable for in this particular seat. So that is the scorecard. They tend to be things like this. So on-time delivery, cash balance, sales calls, sales meetings, proposals, overtime, AR, open projects, capacity utilization, machine downtime. These are the kinds of things that are leading edge indicators that predict the financial future that you are going to see on a scorecard. Okay, so vision, people, data. Then the next component is issues. You need to be aware that it's one of the 6 components. You don't need to know more about it for the purposes of job search. And next is process. The only thing you really need to know about process in an EOS company is that this is not AS 9100, ISO, ITAR, QMS, 100% of anything that could ever possibly happen. EOS companies take a very entrepreneurial approach, documenting the 20% of the process that gets us 80% of the results. So it's really minimal documentation. It's not a job training aid. So you can't expect that the process is going to teach you how to do your job. What the process is there to do is to say, all right, well, if we've got 5 project managers and all the 5 project managers are the right people in the right seat, then any way that the 5 of them wanted to manage their projects would probably be fine. But if we have 5 project managers managing projects 5 different ways, that's not going to work. So we just have to figure out what's the simplest and best way, and we have to do it that way every single time. So if you come in as a project manager, you'll be able to look and say, okay, I know how to manage projects. I know I know how to do, Gantt charts, and I know how to do scope, and I know how to do change management and all those kinds of things. I just have to look and say, which way is it done at this company? So that's what a process is about in EOS companies. And then the last is traction. A couple disciplines here. One, we talked about rocks, and that's important because you will have rocks. And then the second is meetings. All you really need to know about meetings right now is that there is a specific way that EOS companies run a weekly meeting. And it's called a level 10 meeting. You don't need to know the details. Just be aware that there's a certain way that they like to do it. And level 10 or L10 is one of those kind of vocab terms that you may hear people talking about that will let you know, aha, like they're running on EOS. So all those 6 together make up the EOS model. And if there's a problem in an organization and you ask why enough times, it's going to come back to a weakness in one of these 6 things. That's why we've got the 6 components. So what does this matter? So what are the action items for you? What do you need to take away from this in terms of what's going to make a difference in what you do as you're in transition, as you're looking at joining different companies? So a handful of these. Thing number one is ask to see the VTO. This is some companies who are just starting EOS get really bent out of shape about private information. We try to talk them through that as quickly as possible. The VTO is a public document inside an EOS company. So if they're asking you to come on board, they should have no problem telling you what's on the VTO. And so remember, that was that 2-page document with 8 shaded boxes. They should be able to slide that across the table to you so you can look and say, I can read and I can understand where this company is going and how they plan to get there. And again, if that's exciting to you, great. If it's not, you're not going to be able to hide at that company. So make sure that this is a place that you really want to go before you keep going in that process. So ask to see the VTO. Interview action number 2 is ask to see the accountability chart. So the accountability chart, again, looks like an org chart, functions differently, but EOS companies don't hire speculatively. So there is a seat on an accountability chart with a title, with roles that has a blank name, and they are trying to put somebody in that seat. You want to see that seat on the accountability chart because we can ask lots of questions about what does it mean to be a good salesperson and things like that. But at the end of the day, there's just a handful of things that they're going to be watching for to say, does this person really hit home runs in this seat? And so you want to see not only what is my seat, but what are the other seats that are on the team I'm going to be a part of? And what is the seat that I report to look like? And my direct reports, how have they structured that inside the organization? You want to see that and make sure that that's what you really want and make sure that you believe that you're the right person in the right seat for that. Next is ask to see department rocks. Now, rocks always start at the top of an organization and they cascade down. EOS is a journey. And so if they're early in the journey and you are in one level down in the organization, they may not have department rocks yet, just letting you know that. But if they do, you want to see those. So this is how you know what the priorities of that department really are. And how, if you're going to fit into this department, what does that really look like? What does that feel like? Do you want to be a part of the things that this department is trying to do? So those are department rocks. Next is to ask to see the company's or the department's scorecard. And it depends on if you are interviewing for a leadership team level position, you want to see the company scorecard. If you're interviewing for a mid-manager position or something else, then you want to see the department scorecard, because this is how you know what metrics you're going to be held accountable for. Remember, every person in an EOS company has their name next to at least one metric on a scorecard somewhere. And if there's that metric, there's nobody else in the organization that's accountable for keeping that metric on track. And so right now in this company, they've got an empty seat. They don't have anybody who's being accountable for that metric. And day one, when you start, they're going to hand you that torch and say, congratulations, you're accountable for this metric now. Now, and that doesn't mean that a company is going to expect perfection on day one, but you need to know what metrics you are going to be held accountable for. Now, scorecards and measurables, they also start at the leadership team level and cascade through the organization. So it's possible that the department wouldn't have a scorecard yet, but it will definitely have a scorecard at the company level. And there should be no problem asking to see that. It's another document that's public inside of an EOS company. So here's the big finale slide. I intentionally made this with a loud, obnoxious font. This is what you need to walk away with. The person who is interviewing you is not just asking you random questions and getting to know you. The person who is interviewing you, as soon as the interview is done, they are going to fill out a people analyzer on you. And so they have, what most of my clients do, if they've got 5 core values, they'll have 2, 3, 4 different questions that they can ask for each one of these core values to try to ascertain whether or not somebody really is going to fit in that culture. And regardless of what seat you're in, they're going to have specific questions they're going to be asking to get at, does this person really get it? Is this an intuitive, successful position for this person? Do they really want it? Let's be clear. We don't want to bring somebody here if they don't really want this. And if we bring them here, do they have the capacity to actually execute on this? That's what all of their questions, all of the dialogue, all of the observation of your body language, everything is going down to them being able to fill this thing out. And at the end of it, the result is going to be either saying, I believe that Skip is the right person and would be in the right seat if we hired this person. I believe Skip is the right person, but not in the right seat. I believe that Skip would be in the right seat. He can really do this, but I don't think he's the right person. And that's what we're trying to figure out. And please, please, please hear me say, don't fake it in an EOS company. You will not be able to last. So this is what they are filling out in their heads. This is what you need to be most aware of and take with you into that interview with the EOS companies. So I promised you that you'd have my email address again. So if you want to write something down, you can write down my email address, joel@mile1teams.com. And if you want the slides or you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, go for it. And we have a little bit of extra time that I will surrender back to Minnesota Crossroads. So if you want to be doing Q&A, or we want to move on, or whatever that is, I'm here. You got my time. So I will stop share and officially turn the microphone back over to Skip.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joel. Really appreciate it. Great information. I have to tell you, and for those of you who do have questions, please put them in chat. We can relay them to Joel. Now is your opportunity. You have a little extra time, so please offer. I will say, Joel, that I had an opportunity when I was in transition that I really wanted. I found out they were an EOS company, so I went out and I bought the book and I read it and I brought it to the interview. Just took it on my arm, had it on top of my portfolio, but I was able to talk the language, and they noticed that I had the book. Oh, you read Traction? Oh, really? And I got the job. So what you've said is so true. And if the company is a believer, it's almost cult-like. I mean, they speak the talk, and it's a big deal. And so I think your message is a very powerful one.
Skip, I never thought of that, but yes, if you know that they're an EOS company, buy the book, read it, bring it to the interview. That will make a big difference. So yeah, it did. Next time I do this presentation, I'm writing that down because that's a good one.
Yeah, and I didn't even really say anything. I just tucked it under my arm. I just when I had it on top of my folder, and I just had it right on top of the table. But they noticed. They asked me about it. So that was fun. Somebody in the chat asked if you can share your email again.
Yep, I'll put it in the chat here. There you are.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Other questions? Now's your opportunity. I thought it was an excellent point too, that, and I didn't realize how prevalent EOS was in the Twin City area. And so the chances that a company you're talking to is going to be utilizing it is pretty decent. And what a powerful thing to be able to have that tool, that all the structure of their mindset and how they're going to interview and what they're going to evaluate you on, to be able to know that going in is, wow, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I very rarely run across somebody in the Twin Cities that hasn't at least heard of EOS. They may not know the details, but they're like, oh yeah, that's that Traction thing. Or yeah, I got a buddy whose company is. So it's very prevalent.
Awesome. We have a question from Judy, and she said, how do you find out if they're an EOS company?
Okay, couple ways. One is that if you look on their website and they have core values listed and they seem real. So like, they're not going to be things like communication, respect, integrity, excellence, teamwork. The core values in EOS company are much more customized, much deeper than that. So if you see core values and you're like, wow, that's not cookie cutter, then there's a good chance that they're an EOS company. Sometimes they actually say on their website, and there's little like electronic badges you can get that put on there. You can look and listen for EOS terms. So in the job ad, if you see things that say scorecards and rocks and measurables and accountability chart and integrator and visionary, and if you see those things, there's a good indication. And then also just being able to look around the office, because if they're an EOS company, they're going to have these books and they stick out. So that's an easy way to do it. The other thing is, honestly, you can just ask people. Nobody runs on EOS and wants to hide it. So if they run on EOS, they'll be like, oh my gosh, yes. And they'll be so excited about that. If they don't, they'll like, who cares? But there's no problem with asking. You're not going to get in trouble somehow with an EOS company for asking if they run on EOS.
And maybe a question like, gee, I'm a big fan of EOS as a business system. Do you operate under any type of business system? And even if they don't, to me, that would be like, huh, boy, that's an impressive question. They are aware of this thing or whatever. So it might be a positive even if they don't operate under EOS.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions from the folks in Crossroads Nation joining us across the country? Now's your chance. You do have the email, Joel at mile1teams.com, and Joel is kind enough that if you email him, he would provide you with the slides, which is very generous. Thank you, Joel. And obviously the presentation, if you want to watch it again, will be available on our YouTube channel. So don't hesitate to do that. And if there are no other questions, we thank you, Joel. What a great message, powerful. And thank you for giving us a bunch more tools in our tool chest to navigate our job transition journey.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Now, Skip,
right.
you got to make one more. Like, how hot is it in Minnesota?
All right, I got one more. Let's see here. It's so hot in Minnesota that I saw 2 trees fighting over a dog. That's hot. That is hot. I'll tell you right now. So I'm done. Joel, thank you so much again and appreciate your great message. Awesome. Well, hope you got something out of today. Covered lots of stuff. Again, a recording of this will be available to you on the YouTube channel. So check that out along with all the other many similar programs that have been previously offered. And so that is something that you can look for. And remember to check out the website, mncrossroads.com, with all the resources, the 8-week classes on how to find a job as quickly as possible, the networking, which starts here at 9 o'clock, 9 to 11 every Thursday, the one-on-one help that you can get, customized help for your specific questions, prayer support, and of course, don't forget the July 10th all-day Saturday workshop that is packed full of different speakers, workshops, materials for you. Get lunch and very nominal cost for that. So that you can also register for that on our site. So a lot of stuff going on. The next event that we have available for you is going to be on Thursday evening, July 8th. And the subject matter is the tactful art of self-promotion in your job search. The art of tactful self-promotion in your job search. And I've heard Nancy Burke, the author of that book, speak before, and it's a great message. Because ultimately, in our interviews and such, that's really what we have to do, but it can make us feel a little uncomfortable, can it? That we got to kind of talk about ourselves and all that. But if we don't kind of toot our own horn, who will? And she has a great message on how to do it, which we have to do, but do it in a very tactful way. And so don't miss that. That is Thursday evening, PM, July 8th, from 7 to 8:30. Well, it's been a great day. Hopefully you found it helpful. Don't hesitate to turn back to the site, mncrossroads.com, for all the resources. And we hope that we see you again in the future. And thank you for joining us today, and make it a great day.